There's something about you that even Carl Jung couldn't fully explain. Not your thoughts, not your behavior, not even your shadow. Something deeper, something that appears suddenly, without warning. A feeling, a reaction, a thought that doesn't seem to belong to you, yet it comes from within. You don't choose it, you don't control it, and most of the time you don't even question it, you just accept it. Jung spent his life trying to understand the human mind. He mapped the unconscious, explored the shadow, defined the persona. He believed that beneath the surface of consciousness there were layers, structures that influenced everything we do. But even with all that, there was something that remained unresolved. Because there are moments when your mind behaves in ways that don't fit any pattern, moments when you feel like a stranger to yourself. A sudden shift in emotion, a thought that feels intrusive, a reaction that feels too strong or completely disconnected. And afterward you try to explain it, you try to justify it, you tell yourself it made sense. But deep down, you know something was off. Jung noticed this too. He realized that not everything emerging from the mind could be easily categorized. Some things didn't belong entirely to the conscious or the unconscious. They existed in between. And that's where things become disturbing. Because if something can influence you without fully belonging to you, then what exactly is it? And more importantly, why does it feel so familiar? Jung believed that the unconscious mind was not just a passive space where forgotten memories lived. It was active, dynamic, constantly influencing your thoughts, emotions, and decisions. But even within that framework, there were anomalies, experiences that didn't follow the logic of the unconscious as he understood it. For example, have you ever had a thought that felt completely foreign, yet deeply personal at the same time, as if it didn't come from you, but still knew everything about you? That contradiction is difficult to explain, because normally even unconscious thoughts are tied to your experiences, your memories, your suppressed emotions. They have roots, they have context, but these moments feel different, they feel disconnected, and yet they affect you. They shape your mood, your perception, sometimes even your actions. Jung described the psyche as a system of interacting parts, the ego, the shadow, the anima, the self, each with its own role. But what happens when something doesn't fit into any of these? Something that doesn't behave like the ego, doesn't reflect the shadow, doesn't integrate with the self, something that appears and disappears, leaving behind a trace, a feeling, a question, a disturbance. And the more you try to understand it, the more it slips away. There's a reason why most people never notice this. Because it hides in plain sight. It blends with your normal thoughts. It disguises itself as something familiar. It doesn't announce its presence. It doesn't feel external. It feels like you. And that's what makes it so difficult to detect. You assume that everything happening in your mind belongs to you. That every thought is yours. Every reaction is justified. Every impulse is real. But what if that assumption is wrong? What if there are elements within your mind that imitate your voice, your logic, your identity? Jung hinted at this possibility when he explored the idea that the psyche is not as unified as it seems, that there are autonomous complexes, parts of the mind that operate independently, but even those complexes still had structure. They could be traced, they could be analyzed. This feels different, because it doesn't behave like a system. It behaves like something observing the system, something that knows how you think before you do, and sometimes it feels like it's one step ahead. The most disturbing part is not its existence, it's your reaction to it. Because even when something feels off, you rarely stop. You don't question it deeply. You don't investigate. You move on. You normalize it. And over time, it becomes part of your experience, part of your identity. That's how something unfamiliar becomes invisible. Jung believed that awareness was the key to understanding the mind, that by observing your thoughts, your emotions, your patterns, you could begin to uncover the deeper layers of your psyche. But this requires something most people avoid: stillness, attention, honest observation. Because the moment you slow down, you start to notice things, patterns that repeat, thoughts that appear out of nowhere, reactions that don't align with your values, and the more you observe, the more you realize that your mind is not as consistent as you thought. There are gaps, interruptions, moments where something else seems to take over, and then it's gone. So what is it? Jung never gave a definitive answer, not because he didn't try, but because some aspects of the mind resist explanation. They exist beyond the frameworks we create, beyond categories, beyond language, and that's what makes them so unsettling. Because we rely on understanding to feel in control. We name things, we define them, we organize them, and in doing so, we feel safe. But when something cannot be explained, that sense of control begins to fade. You realize that there are limits to your understanding, limits to your awareness, and maybe limits to your control. The truth is not that something is controlling you. It's that you don't fully understand what you are, not yet, because the mind is not a simple structure. It's layered, complex, and constantly evolving. Jung opened the door to understanding the deeper parts of the psyche, but even he knew that there were areas that remained unclear, unexplored, unresolved. And maybe that's the point. Because the moment you believe you fully understand yourself, you stop questioning. And the moment you stop questioning, you stop seeing. So maybe this isn't something to fear. Maybe it's something to observe, to explore, to remain aware of. Because awareness is what separates reaction from understanding. And understanding is what brings you closer to something real, even if it's incomplete, even if it's uncertain. Because sometimes, the most important realization is not knowing the answer. It's realizing that there is something you don't yet understand. And that might be the most honest place to start. There's one final thing Carl Jung understood, but never fully explained. The more you try to define yourself, the further you move away from what you really are. Because identity is not fixed. It shifts, it adapts, and sometimes it hides. Not from the world, but from you. That's why moments of confusion feel so intense, because for a second, the illusion breaks, and you see something deeper, something unfamiliar, something real, and most people look away. They return to the version of themselves they understand, because it feels safe. But if you stay there just a little longer, you begin to notice something, that what you thought was you was never the full picture. And maybe that's where everything starts to change.